We'll call this meeting to order. It's the Holyoke City Council's Finance Committee. My name is Joe McGiverin, Chair. To my right is Mike Sullivan, City Councilor at Large. To my immediate left is Jim Leahy, City Councilor at Large, followed by Peter Tallman, City Councilor at Large. We have an agenda this evening that consists of 3 items. Unless there's any motions, we shall go in order. We do not have any minutes to review, but they should be forthcoming shortly. Item number 1, introduced under my name, is that in accordance with the Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accept the provisions of the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant and authorizes the establishment of fund and/or method to appropriate for the accounting of the receipts, expenditures, and any resources or all resources associated with the administration of grant.
Make a motion to take it off the table.
Motion made and seconded to remove from the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Andrew, is this the one you're here for? And anyone else, please come in and fill us in on all the details.
Good evening, gentlemen.
With us is our Conservation Director and our Planning Board and Economic Development Director.
Evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening. All yours.
Okay, so Governor Baker has this Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness program that's been established to help the Commonwealth and its communities become more prepared for climate change and the climate scenarios that are predicted over the next century. So it's a new program, and there's about a third to about a half of the Commonwealth has become an MVP community. Holyoke was recently one of the first rounds to be an MVP community. There's a report that I need to actually give each of you the report, but it tells you, number of days that are going to be hotter in the future. It's kind of, it's interesting reading, but that's the science behind it, and part of our role is to plan for the future. And there were 2 grants that were submitted to the state for funding implementation. So now that we're an MVP community, we can do these implementation grants. And one was a generator for the War Memorial because that is one of the designated cooling shelters for the city. So on a day like today, when the cooling shelters get activated, it's a place that people can go to cool off. And if we lose power, then obviously the air conditioning is busted. So that was one of them. And the other one, which is the one that's in front of you tonight, is the sort of 2-way dialogue between the island of Puerto Rico and the city of Holyoke to understand exactly what happened before, during, and after Maria, when Holyoke became a safe place for roughly 2,000 people in response to the storm. So the first idea was shot down, which is kind of an indicator of where this funding is going to go in the future. The Commonwealth didn't really like the idea of just taking a project that was on somebody's capital improvement plan and kind of shifting it to this funding source. So what we can glean is that right now the state's looking to fund programs that are really moving the needle on how we react to climate change, or at least prepare for climate change. So, and the reason why the Hurricane Maria study was proposed initially was, so in our work, we spent a lot of time thinking about the future, and in 2017, when this storm happened, there was a really intense sort of local community reaction to it. Many people had friends, family members, acquaintances, relatives, who for a long period of time, their status was unknown. Were they safe? Were they in a dangerous situation? And that sort of question mark, as many people can attest, kind of created this lingering uncertainty amongst people who have ties to the island. And then once that sort of cloud was lifted, we had, based upon cell phone data and based upon intake data from Enlace de Familias, roughly 2,000 people came to Holyoke to get away from the conditions on the island until they stabilized. So in the planning profession, we spent a lot of time kind of guessing at the future, and Maria gave us a really firm peek around the corner about what's going to be coming down the pipeline. So this grant was written to request funding to do a study, sort of a multi-jurisdictional study involving representatives from the City of Holyoke, representatives from the City of San Juan, and a consultant team to just to ask the question, what happened, what worked, what didn't work, what were some of the mitigating factors for people on the island, what were some of the mitigating factors for people in Holyoke, and how can we learn from mistakes that happen either in Puerto Rico or in Holyoke, and how can we make this a transferable document to the rest of the Commonwealth, so that in the future, when sort of climate-related events cause migrations of individuals, other communities can learn from Holyoke's experience. And Marcos can talk a little bit more directly about how this affects both migration within sort of the continental section of America and migration from the island. He's somebody he's been dealing with the data a little bit more, and he can probably address that with.
Can I just ask you a question? Did they approve this study, or they not approve it?
They approved funding for the study.
Oh, they did. Okay. For some reason, I thought you said they did not approve it.
Yeah, the one that got shut down was funding the generator for War Memorial. So this one, they yeah. So now the Lieutenant Governor Polito, it's kind of been brought up to her level as like something that they're really excited about funding, and it's kind of generating buzz around the state as like a really cool, innovative project. So,
Andrew, before we turn on Marcus's green light over there, the total grant is $150,000.
So everything it's $200,000 in total, $150,000 in consultant costs, and then $50,000 in kind, which is going to be staff time.
Okay, and the in-kind, you're fairly confident can be done through our support, our work of employees?
That's the anticipation. Right now, we're not requesting any funding to be transferred.
Okay, and that $50,000, well, that'll just go on top of the $150,000, but the $150,000 will be to spend on everything else?
Correct.
Okay. Marcus, green light.
Thank you. So taking a step back for a second, after Maria, the institutions in Holyoke self-convened because it was clear that no one had really gone through something like this at the state level, at least not during our generation. And no one had answers to anything. Okay, so people are going to come. We know that because we have the highest concentration of Puerto Ricans anywhere off the island. Even if we don't have the highest number, we have the highest concentration. And we know that as a proportion of a population, that's going to mean our organizations are going to suffer disruption and impact. And that was the case. We saw local families hosting family members or friends, and they were, their pockets were disrupted. Even though we saw just over 2,000 or 2,500 people coming to Holyoke. The One-Stop Family Resource Center serviced about 5,000 people because half of those were our own residents who were impacted by helping others that they cared about. The Holyoke Public Schools saw well over 100 students come here. And then other local organizations like the health center and the hospital. This was something that other communities were facing as well, or they were going to face, Springfield and Boston in particular, and Worcester. And so, as Andrew already said, that's something that we have to prepare for in the future as well as a Commonwealth. Could it happen again? Certainly, we know that climate disruption is real. It will continue happening. Could it happen to us, to Holyoke? That's also something that we need to consider. When you look at the patterns of where Puerto Rican populations are, I don't know, maybe we just love hurricanes. We're on the island of Puerto Rico. There's 1 million Puerto Ricans in Central and South Florida, and there's a large concentration of Puerto Ricans in New York, in the South Brooklyn and South Bronx, all in places where Sandy was passed and flooded. So that's to say that we don't have to only imagine a scenario where another hurricane hits Puerto Rico. We only have to imagine that hurricanes will happen within the next decade, and that for our relatively small size, we could see something maybe not as big as Maria, but something that could cause a disruption without the big flow of money or attention from the state or the federal government, But suddenly we're faced with how do we help 150 people, right? So maybe it's not 2,000, but it's to that scale. So it's definitely in our interest to understand how that playbook goes. A lot of things that we did went very well, and it helped that we started first. And because we convened, the state and federal partners came to the table, and they mimicked a lot of the things that we're trying out. Some stuff did not work. And then we're going to learn from that. And then some things just were out of our control, and it was upstream. If someone comes from the island without proper identification or proper certifications, even if they have them, it's really hard to help them. So that's where the conversation on the island side is going to help, because just like we're all kind of hardwired here in the States, well, I'm going to say not me. I've learned it recently, but how to react to a winter storm, or how people in Puerto Rico are hardwired to react to when a storm comes to protect your life and your property. How do you hardwire yourself to the possibility that you may face a disruption so big where you're going to have to include certain behaviors in case you have to migrate? And so these are all things that we have to look at, which will be, yes, a playbook for us, but that's why the Commonwealth is willing to put in so much money, because it'll be a playbook for the entire Commonwealth.
What will your final product look like?
What we're envisioning is not just a stale document on a shelf. It's going to be English and Spanish. What we're trying to capture is a lot of the living history element of it. So there'll be like a document there'll be the dry plan that you're all familiar with that has the data, the numbers, and the recommendations. That'll be in both English and Spanish. In addition to that, what we're looking at is creating individual case studies that highlight what it means, that can encapsulate what this aspect of this plan is talking about is what this person lived through. And the reason that was proposed initially was because what we have from these 2,000 some odd individuals is a lot of knowledge, and it would be a shame if we lost that. So what we want to do is kind of tell that, and in both sort of like the bureaucratic voice that we're all familiar with, as well as the sort of living voice that people who go through it.
And if a catastrophe, we've had some brushes, but certainly from a public safety point of view, I think we're prepared in terms of our public safety response. But we've had some brushes, the storm that knocked out power for 3 days, the couple of microbursts here and there, and the close Springfield tornado hit. What would the report contain as to how Holyoke would prepare if it happened to us, as opposed to our connection to like the island of Puerto Rico and families and friends and so forth?
Well, I think this is the benefit of the two-way information exchange, is that we're going to learn from people who were suddenly uprooted, and what were the documents that they needed to make their life easier. What paperwork did they have to present if, at arriving upon Enlace de Familias, to demonstrate that they were actually from Puerto Rico and that they survived this event. Marcos has talked a lot sort of with me offline about the benefit of people having their passports in a place that they could reach before they were leaving, and not everybody had like a box that they could keep their passport in. And I think what we'll see is that there's some simple and some complicated things for people to deal with, and the goal would be to break them down individually into simple things, like not to get too specific, like here in Holyoke, like would you have to print birth certificates quickly for people? Like Marcos has said that in Puerto Rico, the island has like a central government that does stuff like that. So there'll be some similarities and some differences between like the structures of the two communities.
Could you also work with the federal government and have them set up like a kiosk for passports? Because if you A, don't have one, or B, it got destroyed, if the federal government set up like a kiosk at the airport, make it easier for a transition for these people.
Well, and one of the things that this is the importance of not just being a dry document, right? There has to be knowledge absorption from the population. So passport is one thing. You don't need a passport to travel from Puerto Rico here, but you will have to be Real ID compliant, the federal standard for your driver's license. So if you have a driver's license, but it's not Real ID compliant, it hasn't been urgent for you, then this is something that you have to put on your checklist for the next couple of years. Again, it's kind of, as I said before, upstream. But there are situations there where people arrived here, and then it was very hard for us to help, and without the proper help, then it became a strain for them and a strain for us.
To your point, is I'm thinking 100 or 200, how many students came? They probably don't have any records. So Dr. Streich is like, all right, where do we put them? What classes do we put them in? You know, what grade level are they at? It could be different for reading and math. I mean, that's a nightmare for these poor kids and for the school department.
Right, a lot of it will be, okay, identifying what protocols were already developed, making sure that they're centralized so that we know and they outlive any one of us in our positions, because every institution had to develop protocols for this. The health center had to develop protocols for, all right, I don't know your health history either. You know, what's going to be the checklist of what I'm checking for on your health requirements to make sure I get you the immediate medicine that you need. At the public schools, great example, that as well.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought up Real ID because I went for mine 2 weeks ago. I was one document short. Don't even ask. Councilor Dahlman.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming down. I think this is important to do this from what happened in Puerto Rico. And my wife has family members from there and the difficulty they were having. I mean, they stayed there, but just for months without power or water. I understand what they're going through. And then for the people to come here, like not knowing where to go, having a central place to go to as far as documentation for, hospitals, schools, just basic needs, food. And not everybody has a place to stay either. Not everybody had family here. So trying to put them up and everything, I think this is good. And Real ID, Joe, I did mine about 10 days ago. I just got in the mail today and it wasn't easy. I was missing 2. I had to go back twice home to get the documents I need. So and my wife did say she wants to get one the next time too. It's a lot of
I
information.
didn't have time to go back home. I just said, give me the standard one and I'll fix it in 2 years.
Yeah, I got the Real ID and there's a lot of documents you needed and it took a while. I mean, I had somebody sit down with me actually because I wouldn't have known. So something like that, going through that, or somebody coming from the island and the devastation that they had there and just getting here and like, where do we start? I think this is a great tool to help them out and to move and to learn from other communities, to learn if this happens again. Not just in Puerto Rico, it could happen here, it could happen in Florida where people are coming here to get help. So I think this is a great thing and really something that as you get the document together, hopefully we can be informed on what's happening and the people that are meeting that any way that we as officials can help out anyway with the process. We're here for you. So.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yep. Thank you. This for either one of you. $200,000 to produce a document. That to me, that sounds like a ridiculous amount of money. If 150,000 of it's coming from Boston, so be it. But could you explain to me a little more, or the 50,000 in kind? How much time is that going to take up? What's that going to entail? How is it going to impact other functions, and who is going to be participating in this in kind?
I think a lot of it's going to be figuring out how to pull it off, right? So we have a cool project in front of us, and right now there's no guarantee that it's actually going to be a success. What we have to do as the project team is we have to assemble the plane as we're taking off. So I think a lot of it is going to be geared toward just making contacts with people in multiple communities here in Holyoke, nonprofit, public sector, government entities that have been involved in response, making contacts on the island, making sure that the consultant that gets hired is actually a good consultant. My biggest fear actually with the project is not that we won't work enough on it. It's that we'll hire a consultant who can't be a good partner for us. I think there's in any project that there's if you get 4 or 5 municipal staff working on it and it takes a couple of hours every day to pull it off, you can really come up to $50,000 really quickly. My main concern is the consultant selection process. And that money isn't wisely spent. I feel like dedicated municipal staff will be a good buy for the money, so I think that's my real concern. And that's why we have to be really careful who we hire. But when it comes to the time, on our end, we have to file reports with the state on how many hours people are working on it, and then that gets kind of kicked into our local match requirement. So yeah, it's a lot of money, but also at the same time, it's like a big question with no answer. Like, how do you accommodate 2,000 people in your community because they've arrived from another state? And I think the sort of like the scale of the question will require a lot of time to figure it out.
So basically, it's your office that's going to be handling the bulk of this?
Coordinating, yeah. So like with my office, with Marcos's office, and basically people that we're going to bring in to the project. So even if it's like a city councilor who, is being interviewed on their response, like that all gets kind of factored. Like if you spend 2 hours talking about it, then that goes into the local match. So a lot of it has to go to the project manager to keep track of who was talking to whom,
Well, a city councilor only makes $1.65 an hour.
I was going to say
So,
$1.25.
Yeah, but we've got like a federal rate that we're supposed to use for volunteers and everything. So I mean, there's what you're paid and what you're worth, and we can all agree you're not paid what you're worth. So.
Bellamy, do you have anything to offer here, or I know grants are usually end up somewhere through your office? Not about the grant, but the in-kind, that's doable at this rate? No? Okay. Thank you, Sergeant Schultz. Anything else?
Make a motion to approve it.
Motion made second to approve. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Yeah, gentlemen, I think we meet tomorrow night, and we'll bring this forward to the full city council. I think you've answered all anticipated questions, but if there are any, we'll certainly forward them to you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Item number 2 is entered under my name also. It's an order that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accepts the provisions of the Holyoke Tourism Plan grant, authorizes establishment of a fund and any other method appropriate for the counting of the receipts, expenditures, and all resources associated with the administration of said grant.
Make a motion to keep taking off the table.
Second.
Motion made second to remove from the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Marcus will be the lead on this one. And
Thank you, Counselor. This is a $100,000, I wouldn't waste your time. A $100,000 grant from the Massachusetts Gaming Commission to the City of Holyoke. When the Gaming Commission created its rules and regulations for the gaming industry and the fees for the licenses, one of the funds that they created was called the Reserve Planning Grant. This allowed communities that had a surrounding community agreement with a licensed gaming facility to access a one-time planning grant for purposes that they deemed would mitigate against a potential impact from the gaming facility and or take advantage to integrate somehow positively with the gaming facility. We have the benefit of being the only non-abutting community with a surrounding community agreement with M.G.M. Springfield, which opens later this month. And so I should also say that this fund is primed to be used for things that aren't already encompassed in the existing surrounding community agreement. So things that I don't know the totality of it, but a lot of it focuses on traffic and lookbacks, and there's funding from that agreement for those types of activities. But we felt that similarly to what Northampton was looking at with how they use their planning grant, that there's a duality of a threat and an opportunity here with the gaming facility in Springfield, The threat being, because it is a large entertainment venue, and it is expected to have a localized economic impact in downtown Springfield, it could, for lack of a better phrase, take the oxygen out of the room, right? It could take people who would normally maybe consume food in Holyoke, stay in Holyoke hotels and pay the hotels tax here, pay the meals tax here, and attract them to Springfield, or it could attract development of all sorts for entertainment in Springfield, thereby bypassing Holyoke. But there's also the understanding that a gaming facility of that size can add people, not just split the pie differently, but increase the pie. If it's successful in attracting people from other regions, from Massachusetts or other states into the Pioneer Valley. So how can we complement that venue with characteristics that are uniquely ours? The casino is a downtown, it's an urban gaming facility, and we have multiple either existing facilities or assets that could, with some effort and proper planning, be turned into potentially successful entertainment venues, particularly as it concerns ecotourism. We have a lot of conservation land. We have the old ski lift. We have a couple of golf courses that perhaps could benefit from a relationship with a gaming facility. We have a couple of points to launch boats to the river. We have a couple of hospitality locations where we have hotels, but what is the right amount of beds for the types of attractions that we have here now or could have in the future? And of course, we have the one regional shopping district and mall in Western Massachusetts. So all these are things that we need to look at a little bit more strategically, see how we can integrate them and either brand them or make a more concerted effort at identifying the barriers for them to work together, and whatever is identified that can be tackled immediately, then doing that. We're projecting at this point that we would use somewhere around $35,000 for the planning. That number is not based on any quotes that we have right now. That was our best estimate, and frankly, taking advantage of Northampton's due diligence on this prior to us. And we would be looking at using any monies not used for planning for implementation of planning items.
Marcus, did you mention or talk about any in-kind, any matching?
Right. It's not required. They ask us what in-kind stuff we're gonna do because they want to know that they're not the only ones. We calculated roughly staff time that would dedicate over a year. We came up with a number. It's $16,000 in kind, but we're certainly not required to provide anything specific. Yeah.
So that was in the application,
That was in the application. It's
but there's no hold to it?
no, we're entitled to it as a surrounding community. So under question 6 of the application, which is what got funded, it's the bottom of the first paragraph. That's when we indicated that we estimated one staff planner's hours and a couple of hours for myself.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks. Marco, so the $35,000, is that mandated that entire amount, that's what's got to be spent with outside consultants? And
No, I would say less mandated, but the commission has to approve something. They have to, and so, we project that we think something more or less is what it would cost. If it's less, and we can do it with less, then that's fine, and then we'll update them. Surely, implementation dollars are always scarce as well. So if we can do it for less, then that's great, because then there's more money for implementation.
Marcus, would this be helpful for making connections to the Volleyball Hall of Fame, the Children's Museum, attractions that Holyoke have that, are of a tourist nature?
Absolutely. That's that's a great example. You have the Volleyball Hall of Fame and the Basketball Hall of Fame. How can they complement each other? How are they complementing each other now? Do they have strategic plans to do that? How can the city support that? We have assets here that actually could make us a really great destination for child entertainment or family entertainment between those two venues and the fish lift.
Wisteria Hearst, the
Right,
fish
and
lift, the
Wisteria Hearst, right.
merry-go-round.
So you may be able to brand several avenues of entertainment, right? The retail, the ecotourism, the children, culture. You got to take a hard look at, all right, how does the market of, we're calling it tourism because tourism is an export product, but really when you go to another community on the weekend and spend dollars, you are, for that time being, even though you're not taking a long vacation, you are a tourist. You're seeking entertainment. And so having a consultant that understands how the market reacts to certain branding of products, whether it's literally signage and marketing or doing common tickets and stuff like that, and how you get the word out, that those are important things to increase the attractability of the assets.
Okay. And I'm sure the Holyoke Mall Pyramid Corporation will do their reach out, to connect to MGM and to connect to a lot of things that are going on. But the success of the mall is also the success of Holyoke. So I think that wouldn't be a bad idea if that can be included.
Yep.
Any other questions of the committee?
I just want to make it known that I do work for the lottery, and I don't think it has anything to do with this.
No.
But, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any chair will entertain a motion?
Make a motion to accept the grant?
Motion made second to recommend that the grant be adopted. All those in favor? Any opposed? Marcus, again, will put this in front of the city council tomorrow night. Thank you for being present and answering our questions.
Thank you.
And we'll do our best to answer any questions of the city councilors who could not be here this evening. And I did forget to make a note. Our president, Councilor McGee, is not here due to a family commitment tonight, but Councilor Bartley has joined us, and that leads us right into item number 3, which is, Councilor Bartley is the maker of the order. It's an order that the City of Holyoke consider an open checkbook software, refer to the mayor, his chief of staff, IT department, communicate a recommendation to the city council and any associated costs I got cut off here, sorry.
We don't know.
Tomorrow.
Recommendation to City Council and any associated costs by the City Council's first meeting this fall. This is from a constituent request, according to the order written and filed by Councilor Bartley. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any opposed? So moved. David, thank you for joining us, and if you could get us going, we'd love to hear what's in front of us.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Open Checkbook. Is anybody familiar?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar at all. I've heard about it, but I really don't understand it.
Okay, so the Commonwealth has it on its website. And as you know, I think you know that I have pretty regular Ward 3 meetings. This happened to come from a Ward 6 resident, and I thought it out, we talked it out a little bit, and I said I'd be happy to file it on your behalf. The premise is pretty straightforward. Online for the Commonwealth, but let's look at something closer. The city of Chicopee has an open checkbook, and you can go into Google and put an open checkbook Chicopee, and you'll see a pretty user-friendly website on a web page. On the page, you'll have some drop-down boxes. So you'll click one, it'll say a fund. The series of funds would drop down. It could be from Department of Public Works, could be CDBG, it could be some other department. You'll click on the particular one which you're in, Park and Rec, on the one you're interested. Then it'll scan over, what dates are you looking at? So you'll put in January 1st, 2018, and the end date would be today's date. Right below that, you'll have, and so far you've made 3 clicks total. One to get to the site, one for the fund, and one for the dates that you're interested in. And then right below, you'll see the payor, the signee, the payee, you'll see the check number, and you'll see the amount. It's just basically straightforward data. There's not really a reason behind it, but you'll know from the CDBG account on January 25th, the payee was XYZ nonprofit at 123 Chicopee Street, and it was signed off by Richard Koss, and the amount was for $4,200. Okay, well that's interesting. I'm interested in this particular vendor. I want to see what amounts that they get. So basically, it's putting almost without exception, the entire municipal government online for any person to see. The amounts paid, the vendor to whom it was paid, the check number. Pretty straightforward data. There is furthermore information about payroll. Now, I think there might be, it's not 100% the municipal government. I think some of it is maybe protected, and I don't know those laws, so I'm not going to pretend to even know what they are. But if you look at those websites, you'll see that there are some exclusions, some exemptions. Not many, especially for vendors. We're going to know who's paid, out of what accounts, how much they're paid, and the check number. And a lot of that data, I mean, the vast bulk of it is, we know it's the day-to-day, regular routine in government. But a lot of it is of interest to the public. Payroll information could be of interest to the public. What vendors are being paid could be of interest to the public. So the only time I've had a conversation with the mayor's department was with Rory, and it was a very positive conversation, and it was brief, but he indicated that he's aware of it and they're looking into it. My hope tonight is to just have this ever so brief conversation, to at least put it out before counselors, so the counselors that are not aware of it can at least go on to see Open Checkbook Chicopee. I mean, that's a neighboring community. You can see and mass.gov have similar, and I don't know if other municipalities have it. I thought Springfield did. West Side, thanks. Okay, West Side does. Oh, okay, so those are two abutters, and it's pretty user friendly. That's one thing. It's fairly comprehensive. Yes, there would be a cost to it. I would imagine there'd be a website cost. And I remember when the mayor came on board, the C-Click fix, and we still pay for that. I don't know how that's a municipal charge. I mean, we don't receive that for free. And C-Click Fix is, if you're aware of that, if you're signed up for it. I was much more active a few years ago. I'm less active now because I found out better ways to get if I see a problem, I found more effective ways, I should say, to get something resolved, as opposed to taking a picture of it, posting it on C-Click Fix, and having it sent to the mayor's office for disbursement. Now that I understand the workings of this government better, I can just take a picture and send it to the department head. It's just that much more efficient. But Open Checkbook is something that's here. It doesn't have to be replicated. And I think we should at least try to find out what the expenses are after you gentlemen educate yourselves. I hope that Bellamy apparently has looked into it, because you, Lisa, knew about West Side. I presume you have some familiarity. Maybe you want to tell the committee what. Well, if you haven't used it, Bellamy, that's okay. We don't have to pretend that we have. I have used it, and I found it. And I'm no expert. I'm maybe a notch above a novice as far as using the internet. My 15-year-old nephew would go circles around me. But I would say this, and in closing, it's really comprehensive. I think if Holyoke implemented it, I think it'd be a real feather in everybody's cap. Of course, it's subject to appropriation, but it's something we should consider.
I want to thank Bellamy for attending this evening on a couple items, and especially this one. Ryan did reach out to the mayor's office, and Ryan, I believe, did reach out to IT. I don't know what the response was from IT. I was kind of hoping that there was a representative from the mayor's office here. And one reason, one question I anticipate will be on some city councilors' minds if we do this tomorrow evening is the cost associated with the software. Do we have any feel for that, or is that something we could find out, Bellamy, or, okay, because I think that'll be at least before. And David, we would, at this point, there's nothing in front of us in terms of an appropriation, so we could recommend one way or the other to the mayor to see if he would initiate.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're not there yet. What I would really like to ask you to do when you have a chance to get on your computers tonight or next week or next month, just check out Open Checkbook Chicopee yourselves, and see if you like it, see if you hate it, see if it provides some information that I mean, just I don't have a for instance for you because I don't have, I mean, I have my computer here in my pocket, but I mean, that's not going to help you with a small screen. If we were really comprehensive, we would have the big screen set up and we had a dog and pony show, but I mean, that's not what we're about at this point. I would hope that when Rory Casey or the mayor comes around to really seeking vendors that can provide this, or the IT department, and I would say to the chair as well, I believe that the administrative assistant reached out to other department heads as well as the aforementioned ones, and they were not able to attend tonight's meeting either, but I appreciate Bellamy being here.
And that's fine too,
But it's
Counselor.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's certainly okay.
I was
So-
just pushing for your order where it talks about that first fall meeting. I was just trying to set it up.
No,
but that's-
I think if we, as long as you guys and the rest of the board will hear about it tomorrow night, and they can look into it, do some self-education, that I think will lead to other questions, and possibly others will file orders, perhaps that they're thinking about, well, we heard about this open checkbook, can we consider an appropriation? What are the costs and benefits? The end.
Questions? Counselor Tomlin?
No, I think this is great. It's something to look at. I've heard of it, like I said, but I want to sort of check it out and see how it is. And I'm sure it's pretty basic, easy for anybody to get to. And, you know, talking about government being open to the people, I think this would be a great thing. My concern is the cost, but that's something down the road, you know, that we can look at. But it's, I'm looking forward to the discussion on this. I think there'll be a lot of people interested. There's more and more people that watch us on council meetings and committee meetings than I've ever realized, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that like to see where their tax dollars are going, you know, on a daily basis, you know, or weekly basis. So I'm looking forward to the dialogue, and I will, within the next week or two, try to get that open checkbook Chicopee and look at it. I think Jim just looked at it just now for a little bit. It's pretty basic. It's pretty easy to do. So, you know, if it can be done, and we get to the mayor and talk to the IT with the G&E, if it's reasonable, I don't see any problem with it, you know. But thanks for bringing it forward.
Oh, that's what makes my constituent, yeah.
Yeah,
Councilor
Jay, thank you. Yes, I did have a chance to look at it, and it is interesting, and it does break down, as David had said, everything into different buckets, so you can exactly see, you know, where you're spending the vast amount of money, whether it's education or if it's DPW, and it gives you a nice graph, and it does go through quite a bit. I was also doing a little research on it too. Chicopee got it, I think, 2015, I believe, and they got it through a grant through the state. So maybe somebody in our city government can look and see exactly, you know, if there's any grants out there for it as well. You know, but you know, the bottom line, it's fiscal transparency. We use that word quite a bit, but you know, this is something, you know, I'm sure the good folks at home would like to see. Thank you.
If we did purchase the software, does anybody know, and this is more of an IT or maybe even a mayoral question, would anybody know who would do the input? Bellamy?
The one positive about this that I've seen in my limited research is that the company that provides us with Munis has an open checkbook functionality that we could purchase from them or license or whatever. That means the Munis data would seamlessly integrate into the open checkbook application from our existing munis. If we were to buy third-party software, we'd have to create some kind of integration methodology. So I would try to stay away from that and work with munis. I did look at a demo of the munis software this afternoon, and I drooled, quite frankly, because it takes, Jim, what you saw, which was very simple, and it creates lots of graphs and charts, and it can compare year to year, and they compare one department to another, and how much you spent year to date against budget in dazzling format. Now, but I don't know what it takes to do that. Does that mean there has to be a person who sits and manages the software day to day so that all that fanciness can be done? So that's all part of the looking into the cost that Dave talked about.
It does sound very interesting. I think most of us, the transparent and open, and especially when it comes to taxpayers' dollars, as Councilor Bartley said, is important. Any other questions from the committee?
Just one last thing. So I did look up, it does cost the city of Chicopee between $15,000 and $20,000 a year, and that offers updates once a week.
Anything else, Councilor Bartley?
No, I appreciate you taking it up, and just ask that we'll move it on to full board tomorrow.
Okay. So I think the suggestion from Councilor Bartley is that we refer this to the full board tomorrow. We can do it, well, I think the right way to do it is to make a recommendation to the mayor to further with the support of IT, and I don't know if it would be the treasurer's department or under the auditor's department, that, we look into what the cost would be, and, if the mayor so see fit, to put those costs in front of us, which would be down the road, a final vote, which would be the actual vote. Does that make sense?
So we say this to comply with?
Well, it complied with, but with a recommendation to forward it to the mayor. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. All those in favor?
Yep. All right.
Any opposed? So moved. Gentlemen, thank you, and
Thank you, guys.
we'll take it up tomorrow night.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion made, second to adjourn.
When's our next meeting?
Depending,
No,
I
fine.
was looking at the agenda, there's a lot coming in,
Yeah, I saw that.
so that's a good question. When's our September meeting? When's the big E, David?
18th.
18th.
18th?
The election.
And then the election is,
The 4th. Did we switch that meeting to the 5th? Yes, we did. Or did
Alright,
we keep
so-
it on the 4th, no?
so is anybody available on the 30th? Are you gonna use that?
The 30th is a Sunday.
Well, that's
September?
what's this month?
Oh, I'm sorry, August is Thursday. No, it's open, I think.
Because Labor Day is the next week. You available last week, August, Monday, last week, August?
I may not, which is the 26th, is it? I think I can be here. I'm on vacation the 18th. 26th?
On this calendar, 30th is open.
We got a lot coming in tomorrow night, and that's why I suggest we have at least one meeting. I didn't think we needed it, but it's, because there's no free cash. So I thought, but there's, not a lot, but there's a
Aren't you on
few.
vacation that week?
No, I'll come home Sunday.
Oh. It's funny that I know your vacation schedule.
I think everybody does. All right, so we'll shoot at that, and I'll give you a,
30th, I think you said?
Oh, you want, we're not gonna do a Monday meeting? Or you're what?
no, I meant Monday. I just said 30th. This month is Monday.
27th?
27th, can anybody do that?
I can do that. I'll be back by then.
Or is it,
On there?
Yeah, it's open.
Okay, 27th.
The last Monday in August. So
Oh,
that'll
yeah,
be
guess whose birthday that is?
Yours.
Dave Bartley Jr.'s.
Oh, really?
he can go for his real license then next week. Okay, motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you.
It's funny, I have all this stuff in my calendar.
Dennis, welcome home.
6:30, right, Joe?